Episode 2, Sex After Pregnancy, Not Quite a Bounce Back. So, whether you're in the thick of motherhood, wondering when sex gets fun again, or if you're just here for solidarity, stick around. But maybe not with your audio on loud in public, or if you're driving with your father in law, or other people you don't want to hear the word vagina sitting next to.
Or they do wanna hear vagina, but they didn't wanna hear vaginal science. That wasn't the context in which they wanted to hear about the vagina.
Vagina was okay, but
Well, you got to
yeah.
dryness.
So, opening prompt. What surprised you most about sex after becoming a mom?
Wow, so many things. I think the first one is it just changes everything, but especially how much what is the thing that they tell you when you go to the gynecologist for your follow-up appointment, and they tell you
Talking about sex.
well, I think that they tell you the thing where they're like, "Oh, what kind of birth control methods do you have in place till I because I have an IUD, so you can't get the IUD back in until 6 weeks after or something, not that I wanted anybody near there, but this is my whole point, that they were like, "Oh, well, do you have a backup kind contraceptive to use?" And I'm like,
No.
who is doing that?" I mean, I guess everyone has different experiences, and I certainly had some really bad tearing, so I was not going to be a candidate for sex 2 weeks after a baby, but
So, with me and I had a C-section, so I didn't have the tearing, but with breastfeeding, it was shocking how, you become very, very dry, and that, just so you know, is not just because your sex drive is not there because you're extremely busy and extremely tired, but your low estrogen levels and your high prolactin levels actually make it that your vagina goes from being, like, lubricated and soft and squishy to, like, very dry and thin. So this is not if you're feeling like, "Oh, it's just that my sex drive is low," or anything, it's a real thing, and it's something that I feel lucky enough that my best friend had literally just delivered her baby, maybe 2 months or so, and she's like, "Nobody tells you, and you're trying to have sex, and you're like, 'This hurts so badly.'" And so then I did a Google search and
Mhm.
I looked it up, and so that was a little shocking.
Well, first of all, this is why I love having a medical professional to chat to about these topics. But I mean, also, ladies, it is okay if your sex drive is low because there's just a lot happening to your body. And also great if your sex drive is high. That's really exciting for you. Mine was not. I don't know. I think I was,
You're a superwoman if your sex hormone is high those first 6.
yeah, good for you to get it. Get some in whatever way feels good to you. Because I think I didn't want to be touched down there for a while. How long after for you after did you feel like things started to bounce back?
I think that for me, a big thing, and it's taken me a while to get over, is that my stomach went from being always very flat before pregnancy to I had, I can't think of the medical term for it right now, but the thing where your abdominal muscles split. And so
Mhm.
my stomach after, I mean, right after delivering birth, it was a shock to see what my stomach looked like. It was just, huge and wavy. It was like the baby was just taken out and nothing sucked back in at all. But, even over time and even now that I feel like the rest of me has caught up and is in shape, it's still very surprising when you're used to always feeling sexy because of your overall outward appearance to start learning how to feel sexy again when your outward appearance is different and just embracing that as like this is my body now. And that took me a while. Yeah, I started it after 6 to 8 weeks, but in terms of when I started feeling hot and initiating again, oh my gosh, I don't know, like a year after my second?
I do think there was a big difference for me too between after having the first and the second, which for us, the second is the last one. That after that, I felt like I could start to have my body back and not in a like, I'm getting my bikini body back, but like in a my body belongs to me again slowly because it's like when you're pregnant, your body doesn't feel like it's your own. When you're breastfeeding, when you have this small child, it just and even toddlers, just you have this feeling like your body's kind of always being grabbed by somebody else, really or, figuratively. And so I think that that was a sense of it too, as I started to get myself back, my confidence back more after the second time. 1, because I knew what to expect, but 2, because I felt like I knew that this was the last time, that it wasn't like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna go back to doing all this stuff again in a couple of years, so, like, why," my body is just for motherhood right now for the next few years. Yeah, so I think that that made a difference as well, but I also feel like, just sort of general media things around how women are portrayed and all of those articles about, somebody looking hot this many months after having a baby. Or I remember when Kate Middleton had her baby first, which was the oldest one. And there was like the big thing about how she was leaving the hospital and she had to, that she looked so good that she was all like done up. And I'm like, why does she feel like she has to do that? And that they're like, oh, well, she still had to wear this loose fitting dress. Cause I think that's one that a lot of people feel like nobody told them is after you have the baby and you leave the hospital, you're still, like,
Yeah, it does not
5 months pregnant.
it's not an elastic band that goes right
Yes,
back.
you're still wearing those maternity pants.
I to me, my hospital pictures for both kids, it looked like somebody took my current face and my face before having kids, and they, like, extended it out, like, 2 to 3 inches. Like, it's, like, amazing how your nose structure changes to widen. Pregnancy was not for me. Um, I'm happy I did it. I'm happy that I have my 2, but I
Yeah.
never felt that joy.
We need to talk about that too, because there's so much of the conversation of either most of the conversation, of course, being that pregnancy is this like magical thing, especially for people like myself who experienced infertility, is like pregnancy is the greatest ideal. It's what you spent all this money, it's what you spent all this time to achieve. And for you to not enjoy it is just, the pinnacle of ungratefulness. So I think that this is especially true for the current day and age when so many of us are kind of struggling to get, the ones who want to get pregnant are struggling to get pregnant. That there's kind of this mentality that you had better enjoy it. And then there's starting to be some conversation around the very far other end of some of the really terrible things, but to also just sort of talk about and normalize the large number of us who are just like, it's fine. We got a baby at the end of it, it was good. Glad that I tried it. It was an interesting thing, and I didn't love every second of it.
I did not feel like I glowed.
I didn't glow much, yeah. Yeah. If I can ask, was there anything else that in the whole post-pregnancy experience, especially around sex, that you feel like you were surprised by or nobody really talked about beforehand?
I did have some hint that this was going to happen, but the way that the milk starts coming out during sex is, very
I did take to wearing a bra during sex sometimes. I'm like, "This isn't my kink." I don't know.
I had a friend who told me, they're like, "Oh, my husband starts going down there and he loves the milk." And so at some
Mm,
point I had to tell him to stop because I'm like, "This is foreplay. This is not like snack time."
yeah, huh.
So I had read one book before where there was a scene where like the guy started drinking the girl's milk and
Oh,
when
I
it's
think I did too, and I that was off-putting for me. I don't know. Yeah.
it's not my partner's thing to wanna drink the milk at all, and so it's just I guess I could have worn a bra instead of I was just like
Yeah, mine neither, and I just felt like it was a weird thing for me too, especially because then you go, just really the titties being involved at all in that stage when you have the baby feeding, because I just don't I kind of wanted that to be its own separate thing and really keep them out of the conversation entirely while I was breastfeeding. I just like to have some clear boundaries in those kinds of cases. I think it's unfair, there will always be those listicles that are like 10 things nobody ever told you about what it's like to be pregnant or what it's like to have sex after pregnancy. And to be honest, first of all, if it is a listicle in BuzzFeed, then somebody did tell you and it's right there. And so I think part of it is not mainstream conversation, but also that this information is out there, but I didn't even know what to seek out or I don't know, it's kind of like people tell you and you don't want to fully believe them because some of this stuff is just really hard to wrap your head around until it's happening to you. Mm. But for one that I straight up didn't nobody talked to me about, including my OBGYN, was the importance of the pelvic floor therapist. And I think when I finally went to my OBGYN with issues that I was having after pregnancy. She was like, "Oh, you need a pelvic floor therapist." But I feel like I've talked to so many women that we do have casual conversations about all the ways that our pelvic floor is not okay after pregnancy. And obviously, no, they should just give you the card for a pelvic floor therapist on your way out the door. The same way that they're pushing you to get right back on birth control, they should be just giving you the card for the pelvic floor therapist because I know so few people who didn't need one for some kind of reason. Even if you had a C section, there can be ways that you are affected that you need that therapy.
That just basic things like, hey, if you're gonna be breastfeeding, you might not have used lube before, but you might need it during that period because this is what
Hmm.
happens, and you don't make it feel like you're not into your partner or anything like that. It's just, like, the reality of, like, what hormones are happening right now. I don't like
Very true. If they just kind of put that as part of the standard, like you get a little brochure in your welcome baby basket with a little sample packet of lube on it, I feel like that would help normalize it because there are going to be so many women who aren't going to come to their doctor asking about it. I mean, this might be a case where I feel actually positive about Dr. Google and the internet because people will Google it. And I feel like you're going to find that information then. But it would just normalize it a whole lot more if that was just kind of part of these sorts of things, not just that, but that's a really good example of one that talking about the ways that it's going to potentially affect sex after pregnancy is great, especially since they obviously know that people are doing it since they're pushing the birth control. So they know they could give you some more pro tips.
when I think about myself now and when I think about myself before pregnancy, I've always had a very healthy sexual relationship with my partner. Now I'm a big smut reader. Before I was watching more videos. That it was always, a big thing for me, or some not a big, but it was some part of my identity. It's like Kelly's very, very comfortable with that stuff, and it's
Mhm.
something that happens multiple days a week, all that. And then after pregnancy, and really for those first few years when I had the first kid and then the second kid right after, it kind of stopped becoming as big a part of my life. Again, I was there, I was partner, but it's really only now that like my kids are a little bit older, my body feels back to myself that I feel like I'm reclaiming that part of myself that just I don't know, I just didn't have the drive or the energy as much to be.
Yeah. And if you think of it as one of your love languages or for your partner as one of their love languages, then I think that that can be a particularly difficult one because there are just physical reasons that sex, at least, can be off the table. And I think sometimes it's hard to think of other kinds of physical intimacy as really measuring up in the same way. But when you think about other kinds of ways that people give and receive love, those are things that you can do regardless of where you're at physically and what is happening with your body and babies. So I think that that was, for us, like, a particularly hard one because it then if that's the way that you most want to give and receive love, and it's kind of off the table, or at least in the way that you're used to expressing it, then that's kind of the rug being pulled out from under your feet, in terms of how and you're just feeling less loved, and especially for men, because I think that that's a very common love language for men, and it's stacked up on another thing that I feel like people are kind of uncomfortable to talk about. They'll talk about it with older children or pets of that feeling of, oh, you're having mom's love, pulled away from you because she's having to divide it between more things, especially this one that's very needy. But I think that that happens to male partners too, that they're not going through the same thing physically that you're going through. And then if that's an important love language for them, that's kind of being pulled out right at a time when they're feeling a little bit left out. And most of them aren't gonna say that because that feels really selfish to say, but if it's honest, then it's something that you should talk about.
Emily Oster, who did a survey of 26,000 women. Oh, sorry, there was 96% women, but there was a little 4% or 5% men in there. It was one of her parent data articles, and she showed that there's really significant variation by what age your children are. When the age of the kids are younger, it's, the recorded sexual frequency is lower, and then the older your kids get, the even though you're getting older and older people, their sex time slightly decreases, you're having more and more. And yes, going with that, men were more likely to say that they're not having enough sex than women, which isn't surprising.
Yeah, what does that look like for you, Kelly, with that thing? Because I think that's already for a
For
lot of couples, the mismatch going into having children is that's a pretty common thing for the man in a hetero relationship to look for sex more often than the woman. And then when you have children enter the picture and the woman is bearing the physical burden of all of this, and that drops down even lower, then you're looking at this bigger divide. I think a lot of us have experienced firsthand what that can look like and how you dealt with it.
Yes, so a good sign to me that we were getting back to our usual back and forth with each other was that I, before kids, was more likely to be the initiator and more likely to want it a little bit more. And then, we had the period where pretty consistently it was initiator. And something that I do when I want to initiate, but my partner's mind is somewhere different. And this is where you really don't want to be driving with your father-in-law or something like that.
If you were driving with your father-in-law, now you should stop.
Yeah, unless you're very comfortable with him. But I put I go down on his, like, soft neck as a joke, and I go,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, you're so big in my mouth." I'm joking. Oh my gosh, like, how soft you are. This is so doing it for me, like, oh my gosh. I would make this, like, really, really big deal out of it so that it makes it that we're both laughing hard enough that even if we were in a state when our kids were stressing us out or just different things and our minds weren't there because it's really hard to have 2 people whose minds are both there when you're working parents, it would snap us out of it because even though we were laughing, we were technically doing something sexual that would eventually get to the point that we were both, ready.
Yeah.
And another thing that my partner does is that it can be middle of the day, full kid activity, and he'll be like, "Let's have sex right now." And it's like, "Okay, well, we have a 3 and a 5-year-old. Do you wanna talk about how that's gonna happen?" And he's like, "We're gonna like, sneak up the stairs, and then we're gonna lock the door." And, it's exciting enough that that it works for me. So we go up and then we lock the door, and I can tell you, if you know my kids, one of them particularly, is a little clingy, doesn't like to be outside of my, like a 3-foot circumference from his parents. Well, I just gave up who it is. And you can just hear them like, "Where's mommy? Where's mommy?" And then they start coming up, they're trying to find, and then they're knocking on the door frantically, and it's like Mortal Kombat, like, "Finish her!"
Yes. It's that, like, we have to run and hide and do it, but in a very different context than probably most of the romance novels, but still creating that same sense of, urgency and forbidden love, which I love for you. I have to be honest and say, we pretty much have never tried while the kids are awake because, yeah, our kids are just, sneaky little ninjas, and I don't know, house with thin floors.
In the particular worst situation of, like, when my partner gets eager, my mother-in-law and her boyfriend were both staying in our house, and it was during the middle of the day, and the kids were playing with her, and so he's like, "How's our time?" Like, and all of a sudden, the kids are like, "Wait a second, I've noticed my parents aren't here." So then they're knocking, and the mother-in-law is like, "Hey, I
No.
think they need you." And it's like,
Now, did she figure out what was going on, do you think?
I would hope that she wouldn't even realize that we could have possibly been in the mood as had that happening then. But I think those happen, those feel like, again, to me, those are signs like, okay, we're in like an okay, healthy place now with that. But there were times when in those like first 6 months or so after having kids, that when my partner tried to initiate, I'd be like, "I'm never gonna say no because it's like pizza to me, like, it's always gonna be" or working out, like, I'm always gonna be happy afterwards, but,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be like, I'm basically just gonna, like, lie here just so you know, like, I don't have, like, the energy or interest in doing more. I think it's just your touch, like, you're breastfeeding, and then you have a toddler or another kid who's touching you, and I remember my mom, and I'm from a big family, when went to give her a hug one time, she's like, "I can't take another human touching me right now." And
Mm.
she was breastfeeding, and she had another younger kid at the time, and I was like, "I don't even know what that means. How can you not want me to hug you?" And now I get it.
I think that your mom was naming it. I feel like the phrase touched out kind of came into use during our motherhood years. So I feel like that was very self-aware of your mom to be defining that sensation even before that was something that we were commonly talking about, but it is so real and I think hard to explain, especially just the sense of overwhelm. And it's the touched out, it's the just too much noise and stimulation of every kind and then I find myself more than I used to just really looking forward to having peace and quiet, which is non-sexy, but it is just become such a valuable commodity when you have so little of it. And again, trying to find ways to get that without feeling non-intimate or pulling away from your partner, but at the same time, when it is, especially if you are, in a situation where there's just not the layout in your house or you're not the sneaky ninjas that you and your partner are.
We are not
um,
we are not
I
speaking.
mean, you must have been, Kelly. Your mother-in-law was there. I am just saying, I'm very impressed. This is not something that the average couple is trying. So then I think for a lot of us, that kind of leaves after bedtime, and for a lot of kids, it's like, oh, bedtime's 8 o'clock, but realistically, when are they actually asleep and out of bed? And then you take a little moment to yourself, and then it's pretty much your bedtime. So I think that there's that bit too about then it feels like something that is just one more thing that has to be scheduled, or that has to be fit in. That's just part of the like, oh, okay, like I have to change the baby's diaper, I have to bathe them, and then I have to do this, that it's just one more on kind of this. I have to, again, the of your body belonging to other people, that it's like all these needs that you need to satisfy for other people before you can get to yourself. And that's even if it is very like mutually enjoyable sex. But I think just the idea that,
It's physically exhausting, and sometimes all you wanna do is
yeah.
no. I try to say yes with, like, that go that it's like a workout, always happy when it's done. After the 5K in the sun on Sunday, when a attempt was made to initiate, I was like, "No." I the energy is not there. I'm dehydrated. Like, there's no I cannot foresee a way that this is going to be enjoyable for me, so I can't. I'd rather, like, accidentally walk in on you masturbating than me do this right now.
I honestly feel relieved, Kelly, to know that you do have your boundary at some point because when you were saying even after childbirth, you were still just like, I'm not going to say no. Like, I might not be that excited about it. I'm not saying no. I definitely said no.
Yeah.
And also, just again, and this is why, in my case, I didn't realize how much that I think that you just kind of get this idea, especially because a lot of us are descended from women or a part of cultures that are very like you just kind of keep a stiff upper lip, and these are just things that are part of, or with Christianity too. I think the idea that the pain in childbirth is Eve's punishment, or that sex is not really supposed to be pleasurable for women anyway. That there was just this assumption built in, I think, that kind of like, okay, this is just how your body is now. So the fact that it didn't occur to me immediately when I was experiencing pain from the stitches and the tearing that I'd had, I think my first assumption was like, oh, okay, like this is just how sex feels now. And that it took like a while. And I think honestly, my partner pushing me a little bit to be like, I don't think that this is normal and there should be something that you could do. It was a year after that then I said to my OBGYN and they were like, "Oh yeah, you could talk to a pelvic floor therapist." And I kind of figured it was hopeless at that point because if there then I thought, "Oh, well, if I was going to do something, you probably had to do it right away after because now I have all this scar tissue." Scar work is amazing. She said that she's worked with people 5, 10 years post childbirth, and she's still able to do work on the scar tissue and deal with those kinds of issues, other issues. She was kinda like, "It's never too late to come in and talk to a pelvic floor therapist." So, this, episode is not actually a podcast, it's just my lengthy, commercial for everybody going to see a pelvic floor therapist for peeing your pants when you laugh, pain during sex. I don't know, I think there's a bunch of other things too that
Only the whole year.
a whole year, it was so bad, it was so painful, and I did say no a lot of times. And it was honestly just all mixed up with, like, the low sex drive, the fact that, like, I was kind of ready to just take a year off from that part of my body in general, but,
That
a year is a long time.
there is an article published in 2021 by Grisu, sorry if I mispronounced that, Vicini and Quattraro, that looked at sex around childbirth, and it found that about like over two-thirds and up to 94% of pregnancy or and birthing women experience some form of sexual dysfunction, decreased sex drive, and orgasm difficulty. Um,
Mm.
and that is, again, just something that if it were out there, shared, like, "Hey, this is likely to happen. You are not alone." There are some tools like pelvic floor therapists that, again, your partner or you might not be used to using lube and you might need it. Just like these things that we can do to make it. And also just, taking a break from it and saying, I'm not feeling it right now. Or you can, read the book by Emily Nagoski about auto brakes and accelerators, and so that your husband can think a little bit about your accelerators and your brakes and how to make sure that, if he wants it, that we're thinking a lot about how to accelerate that.
You know, that is true because I think also for a lot of us, the way that you were saying before children, it was just more effortless, especially if you are somebody who just, feels comfortable, expresses yourself sexually, like that's not something that you're struggling with. And then it's as if it's been easy, then I think that that can be particularly it's not something that you would think of first is like, oh, I have to delve into these questions of kind of like what are my brakes and my accelerators because before, if it's just kind of like, "It happens, it's great, it's always fun," like, when the mood strikes me, I move on it. So I think especially for people and couples that have not experienced any hangups around sex, it's probably an even harder thing because that wasn't my first go-to either, was to think about, like, "Oh, I need to like research this or diagnose this or try different things of, what I didn't need to think about before kids that are kinds of things that you need to think about differently and actually put thought into and not just do instinctively, I guess.
Yeah, I actually really like that. Maybe as something that I think I would feel comfortable sharing to a close friend or a sister or something like that who hadn't had kids before about, not just the, hey, warnings that you might be dry, warnings this, but warnings that you might have to be a lot more intentional and to ask your partner to be a lot more intentional about taking the time. And that might take, 30 minutes sounds like, not arbitrary, but, it might even take just like throughout the day, making sure, like, did you get a break? Did you get a nap? Did you get all these different things that you need to then when you do have some alone time with your partner, you're ready.
That is so true about just the other physical needs getting met. What is the thing? The halt or whatever, the hungry, angry, lonely type, but that they kind of have you stop and a lot of times I experience that with other kinds of things where it's just I can't deal with regular shit that comes up in my day. And I'm like, this is so terrible. And then I'm like, oh, well, shit, I didn't eat breakfast. Like, of course, everything is awful right now and I can't deal with the slightest provocation. And I think that that's true again when so much of your day, the first priority is taking care of a person who really can't take care of themselves at all. And then you're being met with, oh, well, I have to make sure that my partner feels like they're loved. The thing that's first falling by the wayside is your own needs. And so, yeah, I think sometimes even going back to things that are as simple as like, are you eating all the meals that you need to in the day? Which when you're breastfeeding is a lot more than three. Are you finding ways to get enough sleep, which might again look different than what your life used to of just like, okay, I have to be like in bed by 10 and oh and then I can wake up feeling refreshed at 6:30.
Maybe before you were confident in how you looked and your body and all that, so you knew that your partner was interested. But even just throughout the day now, like, your body looks so different, or sorry, for some people it bounces back fast. For some people like me, it bounces back slow. that, compliments like, "Hey, you look really hot. I can't wait for later." Like, that can go a long way to making you feel like, "Yes, I can't wait for this."
Yeah.
It's funny how it, like, all changes your views on things because, I'm a big, romantasy reader, so fantasy worlds, and for those of us who read romantasy, Sarah J. Maas is, like, the most popular woman's author
Mhm.
for them, and she has this character, Farah, and Farah loves Reese, and this whole thing that when they finally get together and they're married, they talk a bit about how they have their whole lives. They're, immortal, and there's no rush to having kids. And then they change that, and she ends up having a kid when she's 21. And this felt like such a betrayal to you.
Yeah.
I was like, she's gonna live to be like a
I'm mortal human, and I waited till I was 30. Like, go have some fun, girl.
Yeah, it felt like the least sexy thing that could have possibly happened was this person getting pregnant when she was 21, and it made me wanna go back and look at the author's age when she wrote that and what kids she had because it would have been so clear. It's like, we don't want a kid."
Yeah.
Unless, like, you're totally changing the character and, just making way for the others because to me, having a kid for a partnership that is new and is young and all that, and there's no clock on the way, there's no time. It, if I had advice, it would be to wait longer. I don't know, do what's right for you. But I think
Mhm.
that a few years of being married before having kids would have been awesome.
Yeah, it's a good counterpoint to all the language that we get around your biological clock ticking. And I think I've known so many women who feel pressured to start trying for kids quickly after marriage, whether they got married in their early 20s or more into your 30s. And obviously like it really does start to come into play more as you progress through your 30s. But at the same time, I think that there's so much language around all of the benefits to starting having kids as quickly as you feel like you're in a situation that that could happen for you, that it's helpful to have some counterpoints of if you do feel like waiting is right for you or you're kind of balancing some of the pros and cons, that we should also talk about some of the pros of waiting a little bit longer in terms of having that stability in your relationship where you've gone through a lot of hard stuff together because like you're going to go through some way harder stuff
Really, really.
once you have kids. And so, yeah, if you haven't learned how to navigate, and obviously, like, life comes at you and you figure it out, but I think that that's a great benefit if you have the choice to be able to get to know each other, experience different situations, and also for yourself, both in terms of your confidence, in terms of kind of, yeah, knowing what that playbook is for yourself a little bit more, sexually with kind of reclaiming your pleasure and your boundaries and what you want. I think if you have more experience with that, then you kind of have more things, more plays that you can run in your playbook, um, that exist as options for you.
That's and I remember that when I was getting married, it was always planned to start trying to have kids, like, as soon as, getting the IUD pulled, like, right after the wedding, and part of that was that
Very Catholic of you, Kelly.
it felt like my friend group was actually, like, a friend group thing where I lived in Howard County at the time, and all of them were, getting pregnant, having babies, so if anything, I felt like I was behind the curve, and I was like, "Oh gosh, we're going to start right away so our kids are in the same years," and all that, and I had a colleague who told I had actually multiple work colleagues who told me, "That's a mistake. Trust me, your friend group is gonna look entirely different when you have kids anyways. You're gonna end up"
True.
yeah, people who live by you, who go to the same schools as you, same groups. Please do not do that. Please take a few years. And I didn't listen to them. And guess what? In terms of that friend group who I felt the pressure from in Howard County, not that the pressure was from them, I literally have seen, I think, 0 of them in the last year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It sounds like that, volleyball high school volleyball team that made the pregnancy pact together, but not quite as extreme, and I don't know if anybody's checked in with them recently and how that's working out for them, but it is very true, and I think that's another thing that you can't really fully understand until you are living it, but the kind of new community that sprouts up around you, and we talk about this a lot, especially because I think we live in a urban neighborhood that is just very, kind of families all living next to each other and sharing things and sending kids over to each other's houses and things like that. But I think whatever that looks like in the place that you live, that does start to sprout up and that it will look different from your pre-kid friend group. But also I want to give a shout out here to the friends with no kids. I was reading some advice column and it
You're
was
the
somebody.
stronger curate you are the strongest curator of that group, is what I said.
I have so many friends. Yes, this is my personal soapbox because I feel like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm like a parent now, so I gotta like have other parent friends and like have play dates and things like that." Which is not to say that we don't. I mean, I love those things; those are awesome. But I think some of my closest friends are my childless friends because they can show up for you in a way that like sometimes your mom friends do not have the bandwidth, and I just would never ask them these things. Or it's just like, if I
You're
do
gonna
end
have
up
that
land
with a
up.
whole 6-month-old right now. Like, and
Yeah.
I love babies. I just don't even have it in me. I can't.
I don't, and it's like, if I randomly have childcare on a Thursday night and I'm like, "I wanna go out," I mean, I will certainly text the mom friend group, and maybe out of that, one of them will also spontaneously be able to leave her kids with her partner, but realistically, I just kind of love having that group that I mean, I'm not with them all the time, but sometimes when I do have that random childcare and I'll just text them and be like, "What are y'all doing tonight?" And they're going out, they're just, like, having happy hour after work or something, and so that's really grounding for me, and I do have
What?
time socially with the mom friends where we plenty talk about non-children, this being a great example, of course, Kelly, but it is a guaranteed like, if I want a break from talking about and thinking about kids, I don't have to talk about them once with that group, so, yeah.
Was you sold pelvic therapy and
Yes.
friends without kids.
This is actually my commercial, yes, for keeping strong your childless friends and childless friends, that sounds negative. Yeah, friends without kids, friends who don't have kids and
Oh,
have hobbies and disposable income in lieu of kids, which is awesome, and I like having a little dose of that from time to time.
also good travel partners.
Yes.
I was talking I was talking about this to a few different friends, this thing about sex after pregnancy, and something that I heard, um, is how much and, just to put it in very blunt terms, how much they hated their husbands in the first 6 months after
Well,
pregnancy.
yeah.
And it was funny how it was worded because it was like, "My husband is wonderful. They're extremely helpful. They did everything I could possibly ask." Something took over my emotions that wasn't me, and the fights that we would get in and the things I would get mad about are things I wouldn't even think to mention today. Like, and how it is to know your partner and that your partner knows you beforehand.
Yeah, yeah, so that you can weather that. And just I think for those of us who had marriages previously or relationships previously that were not just sort of a sense of egalitarianism, but were pretty equal, that you did have kind of more of that like, okay, I take out the trash and then you take out the trash. Like if I washed the dishes last night, you wash the dishes this night. And that everything is just like divided down the middle 50-50, or let's be honest, maybe not quite 50-50, but they're trying. To then go into a situation where it is just literally impossible to split some of these things down the middle. And then I think like the total pie, that total share of all the things that needs to get done explodes when you have kids.
And
So
I
even if the male partner is trying harder to pick up more, I think there's also the sense that it's like, yeah, maybe you're picking up like 20% more than you were before, but I feel like I'm picking up 200% more. And that's partially because I'm throwing out numbers here about things that are very unquantifiable. And so, having your body physically given over to nurturing another human, yeah, like losing that sense of what your body is and in ways that are sometimes permanent, that is something that's hard to stack up against, even if you have this partner who is very like makes you muffins to have a little basket of muffins next to you while you're breastfeeding. It feels very hard all of a sudden
that was
to
never
be.
my partner, but it sounds
I
like your partner.
it might have been mine. Honestly, it's all a blur. He definitely does that now. I think that also he was going through so much emotionally. And this kind of transition in roles and identity does impact men too. And I'm not saying this in a way that's like, oh, why don't we like pay more attention to the men? But sometimes they're kind of not doing great. And I know that the things out there about kind of like the male postpartum stuff. Um, in one hand, I'm kind of like, okay, give me a break. But on the other, they are going through a transition in identity too. To me, it's more that kind of concentric circles methodology that they talk about with grief and other kinds of things, but it really can be for any kind of shit that's going down. Is you kind of put care and love inward to the circles and then to the person who's in the middle. Do you know about this one, Kelly?
I
Okay.
don't.
So it comes from grief counseling, and the idea is that it's a bunch of concentric circles, and the person to whom it happened or people are in the centermost circle, and then the people who are closer to them are in the next circle out. So it's like if somebody's husband dies, then the wife and the widow and the kids are in that middle circle, and then the immediate family and close friends, and then everyone's kind of in circles going out from there. And if you are interacting with anybody in this situation, if they're in a inner more circle than you are just like, what do you need? I'm going to help you. And if you have your own grief to process because you also knew that person, then you process your grief outward. So you pick somebody who's in a circle outside of the one that you're in. So for the people in the middle, everybody is in a circle outside of you. But if you're more kind of in the like third ring, then you're providing support to the more inner ring people and um, processing your grief and your trauma outward to somebody who's in an outer more circle than you.
That makes
Um,
sense. Nobody's coming to the dads like, "Hey, you're going through a big adjustment." Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then I think where I mean, this is just like a really helpful way to think about a lot of things. That anytime like people are going through shit, basically, is like whoever's closest to the shit that's going down just needs the care and is not an appropriate place for you to be dumping your trauma. And I think that with the dads, that's probably a really apt one because for a lot of men, especially where it's like they don't have the friend group that they talk about their feelings in the way that women did, for a lot of them, the main place that they would process their shit is with their wife. And that's the one person that you shouldn't be processing your shit with. So, my personal theory is that it gets a lot more bottled up because suddenly they have dealt with this whole identity shift, but they've also lost the one outlet where they would normally be processing their shit. Or they are doing that, in which case that is, like, even worse, and they're, like, trauma dumping on their wife. Like, the guys in the delivery room that are like, "Oh, I am just, like, feeling so hot and uncomfortable in here, and you're squeezing my hand too hard." That did not happen to me, but
Yeah, my partner did not enjoy watching the C-section. He's like, You don't even know what they do down there, Kelly."
I kinda don't blame them, and in general, I appreciated, this is if I'm gonna do commercials in this episode, I would also say commercial for having a doula. That was really helpful for us, and a lot of it was to just kind of help us with the decision making around things as mundane as, I guess, if you are delivering vaginally, it's common to offer to let the dad help, and I think for some dads that's great that they like to feel useful and helpful, and they asked partner if he wanted to hold a leg while I was pushing, and our doula having discussed this with him beforehand and knowing that he was like, "I don't want anything to do with the business end of things." Which I kinda get because it's like you gotta go back there for fun times eventually, so just seeing the World War III carnage being laid out in front of you is, again, not conducive to our earlier conversations of ever resuming sexy time, so I totally get that, but he was also felt very strongly that he wanted to stand by my head and hold my hand, feed me ice chips. And to be perfectly honest, for thousands and thousands of years, women have given birth around other women that are close to them that have experienced childbirth before. So when your main person in the room is your male partner who has been through this exactly the same number of times as you, probably not the best person to be able to coach you through it, to be able to be I mean, my partner wanted to be helpful, but he also, I think, would have been very happy if he could have just, like, been in another room, 1950s style, ready to hand out cigars. I think I had this from some friends too, that when they are faced with really difficult questions, that you and your partner are both kind of like deer in the headlights about it because you're like, I don't know, I'm not a professional. I've never done this before. So we definitely appreciated having someone else there. And then for me, it was nice also just because, yeah, my husband didn't know what he was doing. And that's fair. He had never done it before. Why would he know what he was doing? But he was also just like very, overwhelmed to the point of maybe being useless. Because I think there was a point in pushing that I just got, like, very quiet when they were like, "Oh, okay, like, these are the pushes that are making the baby's head move out." I just became very inwardly focused on, like, "Push that fucking baby out." And he was like, "I was so worried about you. I thought that you were, like, on the verge of some terrible medical thing happening because I've never heard you be quiet before, and you were so fucking quiet." And he's like, "You just looked like you were, in another."
Your body was being taken over by a biological
And
force.
I'm like, "Dude, basically it was." Like, this was a very reasonable response, and I was like, "Fine," in as much as I can recall it now, which I'm sure has my brain, like, painting over a lot of the really traumatic parts. But yeah.
On the TV show Younger, which is amazing, one
Mhm.
of the lesbian characters happens to go with for, a different woman's childbirth, not her own, and she had to go to a support group for people who weren't interested in vaginas, but were interested in vaginas after watching
Ah.
Family, and they were
Mhm.
surrounded by dads, and they were like, "There was an arm coming out of there, an arm, like a little arm."
Yeah, that's some alien shit. Like, again, back to your first point, Kelly, about the magic of pregnancy. If it is magical for you, then that is great. But like those experiences where you could see like a little foot poking through the side of your belly when the baby kicked you and stuff, that to me, that's just like, I mean, it's scientifically, intellectually cool, but it also gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I think that that's okay.
5 months pregnant, that's probably a good time. You're, between the 2 trimesters and your bump is cute, but not too big. That time was nice. I didn't really need the rest of it, though.
My one friend's husband uh described, they were in the middle of having sex while she was pregnant with their son, and he derailed things by saying, "Is this your first time having 2 men inside you?"
Ugh.
You no one's ever forgotten that.
It's like, I don't wanna think about the little man in there.
Yeah, especially I think I have heard that it is a common thing that men worry about is that they are going to hit the baby while they are thrusting, and I'm like, this goes back to the number of men who think that they could beat Venus Williams in a tennis match. Just, the number of men that think that they're so well endowed that they're gonna hit their baby in the head, and also just again to the whole men need to have you need to have sex ed about the opposite sex's anatomy
So, it's a
for a
thing
number of reasons.
in, like, in a recent book that I read, Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood, something that happened was that while they were having sex, the the guy, like, had her pushed down in her stomach so that she could feel his dick within her stomach while she was going in and out, and I've never personally tried that, and maybe I have, like, too much of a layer, but I feel like, how big was this guy? Can you actually
And s
or am I like, is this am I thinking I don't know.
He's, like, jostling her lower intestines to the side. I feel like this sounds like a very male fantasy.
It's showed up a few different times in different books, that's the most recent, but I'm like, "You can put your hand on your stomach and feel?" I don't know, I think
Mhm,
yeah.
maybe this is for very waifish women, I don't know. I'll report back. I've never tried this before.
Well, if you told me, "Oh, you can't feel it," then I would feel like we needed to scratch this part from the record because I would have to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Danny, I admitted that I can't feel you through my stomach walls on my or."
So large that you're not permeating my entire being.
Yeah, we're not, like, risking a perforation over here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most what this thing about this fantasy about men that is very male generated about just like having the hugest guy possible of like having it actually like hit the cervix is like again things where like sex begins to overlap with medical procedures. I just don't need that. And yeah. For me, that can also be the case with fingering sometimes because I feel like it has to be done well. Otherwise, I feel like I'm just getting like some kind of cervical exam.
Oh, the high school, yeah, the high school figure where they're like, "How far up there can I?"
Yeah, you're like, that's not the point. That's not the point.
You don't even really have to be in there, and if you are in, just like 3 inch few inches, nothing
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not performing an exam. We're not.
Yeah.
You want to learn about the female anatomy? Go do that in health class.
Oh my gosh, I'm about to actually frighten you because there's no way that you've ever read a book where this has happened or thought about it. But do you know how dogs knot?
No.
Okay, so when a dog
Is it too late for me to get off this ride?
when a dog is having sex with another dog, and I'm bringing this back.
Okay, wait, I just need to pause first and say, is this knowledge that you gained from smut or is this like medical knowledge that you have?
So, I will
Oh, you will
it is
elaborate on
nothing
it.
knowledge I knew until 2 weeks ago. I'll tell you that. So when a dog has having sex with another dog, it like part of the penis expands within the female dog so that the female dog can't get away for like
Oh,
20
it's
minutes
very
or
rapey.
so. Yeah, they're stuck, so it comes and like if you watch it, I asked one of my friends who grew up on a farm, and she's like
Mhm.
extremely tough to watch when the female dog is not into it and is trying to get away.
Ah,
How there is a thing in romantasy, and I read my first one a few weeks ago, and then I looked it up, like, what is nodding? Like, there's no way anybody wants this, and there was people who requested, like, "I would like a book where there's nodding. I would like a book where there's nodding and the female partner is not into it. I would like
humans, dogs, centaurs, like what are we talking about here?
werewolves." Werewolves.
Werewolves. That makes more sense. Okay, yeah.
Yes, and into the book, by Ali Hazelwood, to the book's credit, the guy did, like, make himself big so she could see beforehand that she was gonna have a knot, and she agreed to it, so it was consensual nodding, but I was so shocked because it just goes into the same thing of, like, guys being huge and all that. That's, like, no part of me wants some extra part to expand and trap me for, like, 20 to 30 minutes.
Well, and this is where I think that for some of the like porn and smut and things like this that I'd also heard about.
You, like, nodding, I was just surprised.
Sure, it like not associated if that's what you like. And I think again, this is like where sometimes people go to live out things that are attractive but also feel taboo that they don't actually necessarily want, or they want to kind of test the boundaries of is that something that I want by just experiencing it through reading about it or watching it, which is also okay. I heard that about like 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, obviously, there is literature out there for people who are like actually into BDSM. That's like that kind of literature. And so 50 Shades of Grey was meant to be very much for like people who are like, "Ooh, this is titillating because I would never do that in real life." So, it's
Yes.
also kind of a
Well,
healthy way to test some things out
and hopefully the
without
people
getting knotted.
that's been naughtied are not trying to test it out in reality with an animal. That would be the only part that that there might be some judgment from the Good Girls podcast towards
Yeah. Yeah. Leave the animals out of it.
yeah, like the animals out of it. But I think maybe this does tie into this episode rather than being a tangent because it could be a helper for fertility. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about how I've been rewatching The Handmaid's Tale, which is not a topic for a sexy podcast because nothing about the sex on that show is a turn on, or is it meant to be? One where Alexis Bledel, the guy's like, "Get out of here," and Alexis Bledel's character is like, "I'm supposed to lay on the bed afterwards," and then she just
Like,
like
lie
lays
there
there.
and let it, like, soak in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's done, like, the candlestick after sex when they're trying to get pregnant. That they're like, "Yes, let it sink into me."
But I do remember reading, in some science magazine, the this is not as exciting as the dog werewolf penises and nodding, but that the shape of the male penis is actually of the in the human male penis is actually evolved so that it can kinda act as like a plunger, which is why we have that, like, head shape, so that if a woman is having sex with a variety of partners, that you will kind of toilet plunge out the previous person's inputs so that your guys have a better chance of success.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, now I gotta go back and find this article because I read it a few years ago, but I don't know, somehow the image the dick plunger image really just stuck with me. I think about it sometimes.
When you first said about the head, I was thinking about how it would help that, like, the cum had less chances to escape because it's a little bigger than the shaft, but now I'm
Yeah,
thinking
yeah. Well, I guess double duty, right? So that you're, like, shooting forward your own, and if there's any residuals from anybody else, you're just, I'm making a plunger motion here, but, you're just kind of s plunging that right out.
Oh my, that's kind of amazing.
Okay, I feel like we can't end on that, so
Okay, so to conclude this episode, big scenario. You run into a woman who you care about who's pregnant for the first time, and she asks you about any advice on what to expect when it comes to sex.
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is the thing that I kept saying for this episode is just normalize talking to a pelvic floor therapist. And then I learned from a friend that you can start talking to a pelvic floor therapist, and there are things that you can be doing before you have the baby. So just start talking to a pelvic floor therapist now. Find and befriend one. How about you, Kelly?
You might need to be a little bit more intentional about sex, and that would continue on for years after having a child, where you're not going to probably be as ready to go as you are now. And it's going to take a little bit more intentionality from you and your partner throughout the day for making sure that you're ready and that you're excited to have it instead of it ever feeling like something that's forced upon you. And also that you might not feel sexy right afterwards. You might be really, really caught off guard by the changes in your body, but there is hope out there because I can say I feel sexier and hotter than ever, even though my stomach is still an outie and seems to always going to be an outie. But I was able to eventually reclaim my body and as it is today, which is different after having two kids, and that's fine.
Yeah. And that I think that it's just really helpful for kind of getting. The thing that we've always been trying to do is not care about some magazine cover idea of what our bodies should look like. I think that getting your priorities shifted a little bit and going through that can really help with actually making that change. And that I just think about my body more than I ever did before. So, both in, thinking about what I like and what I need during sex, but also on just taking care of it, exercising. Kelly and I go to the gym together. And I feel like for myself, I'm in better shape than I was in college, and I was an athlete then, but also a binge drinker, and I ate breakfast cereal at every meal. So I think that it's possible, and this is something that women in our generation and recent generations have been growing around so much, is this idea that it's not like, oh, there's this part of your life that's just over once you have kids and you become a mom and you wear mom jeans and you're not hot anymore. I do wear mom jeans, but I wear them as a fashion statement.
And I wear Levi's, and I feel very hot in them. Oh, and also, ooh, this is a quick little important thing. You might need jeans that button after having a baby because your stomach is now a little bit of an outie, and so jeans that zip, you might find that the zip just comes right undone. So buttons for those of us with an outie belly.
Also, the wide range of beautiful elastic waist pants that are super cute and don't look like sweatpants. I kind of just abandoned the whole. I used to wear a lot of pencil skirts to work before, and then I was like, why am I doing this to myself? So I really just expanded my wardrobe into pants that are cute but have stretchy waists and can accommodate curves.
And also, never ever Google search or search on Reddit what is nodding if you are in a work environment or around this father-in-law who's always lingering.
There's one thing you do after this episode, it is to not do that.
Yes, do not look up nodding. Uh, Thanks for listening, everybody.